when Pamela Stonebrook came up with some personal situations that kept her from being here, I started looking over the list, and believe me, there's plenty of people willing to share, and I appreciate that. So I called Al Bielek, and I said, would you like 27 minutes? Because I said, that's 27 minutes more than you had 10 minutes ago. And he thought he would. Now, Al can talk about whatever he wants to. It's going to be short, so listen really quick. You know Al, a lot of you do. I don't need to introduce him very much, but it's really pleasant to see him all duded up in a suit and everything today. So he's adding a little class to the organization. Will you welcome Al Bielek now to bring the latest updates?
Yeah, as you can see, I really do own a suit, even if it's an old one. I prefer Levi's most of the time. In any case, I have 27 minutes, and what I want to do is outline very briefly, for those of you who may not know my history in the Philadelphia experiment, and how it is I became interested in the subject I'm going to get into, both now and in my workshop Sunday evening, 6:30. They shifted it from Saturday tonight. No more rooms available, so I will be doing the workshop Sunday night. When I was part of the Philadelphia experiment, of course, I was not Al Bielek, I was Edward Cameron. I was born that in 1916, the 4th of August. After going through my usual schools, and Princeton University for a bachelor's and master's, bachelor's 36, master's 37, a PhD in physics from Harvard in 39. My brother and I enlisted in the Navy. Father was a Navy man, and he wanted us to be in the same family tradition, as it were. We went through that period and we became part of the Philadelphia experiment. He already set that up for us, and of course it wasn't known by that name initially. The earliest work started in 1933, directed by Dr. Nikola Tesla, and as time went on, of course, somebody else took it over. We were made part of that project by Father, who apparently had the connections which we did not know of at the time, what he was really into. He left the Navy himself in 1929, December, with a heart murmur and a pension. But he didn't disconnect from the military. His research in most recent years has shown he was in intelligence and working out of the Pentagon as a civilian with some very high levels of clearance. Yet, as I understand it, a level 7 clearance, which is above presidential, and a few other things thrown in by the Pentagon. We never did understand why during the war years and prior to the war years, from 33 through 42, he was able to go with impunity into Nazi Germany and smuggle Nazi scientists out of Germany to the United States, 9 of them. And he got away with it. It's taken many years to try and figure that out, and I finally come up with some conclusions which are not really the purpose of this discussion. But Father set us up for what became known as the Philadelphia experiment. Project Invisibility is what they originally called it. Of course, we went through this, had our tests with the Eldridge to compress this whole thing. And the second test was a complete disaster. Duncan and I jumped off the ship, wound up in 1983. We were there about 12 hours, and then we were shipped back to the Eldridge by the Montauk project, smashed the equipment on the Eldridge, so it returned to 43. Duncan jumped overboard again and disappeared. I stayed there, gave my reports, which they didn't believe. You went to 1983? This is impossible. Well, Dr. von Neumann didn't think it was so impossible because the whole project, which was evolving around invisibility, involved manipulation of time. So he didn't consider it as impossible. Be that as it may, I remained in the Navy for many years. I was in Los Alamos laboratories from July 44 to July 4th, 1947. Was kicked out because of, shall we say, a dispute. I didn't agree with Dr. Edward Teller and his desire to immediately build a hydrogen bomb after the atomic bombs were dropped on Japan. In fact, I frankly told him his math was flawed. He didn't really understand the process and would be out of control, and it couldn't be controlled as a fusion device. He got very angry, extremely angry, and he had the right friends, so I was removed from the lab. And I remained in the Navy and other projects, the Mach 1 project in California, Got quite well acquainted with Jack Ridley. He was a chief aeronautical engineer in the Army Air Force, as they called it then. And we founded our own company in 1949, approximately, to try to develop an ion propulsion engine, which we were successful at in January of 1953. Put out 1,200 pounds thrust for 20 minutes, and the goal was 1,000 pounds thrust. Today they talk about millipounds and the engines, and after that everything sort of came apart at the seams with a lot of help. In March of 1953, while Jack was out on a business trip, I was abducted by a team of Black Ops people. If you know what the Black Ops operators are, the Air Force or the Delta Force from the Navy, they're essentially the same. They do the dirty work and pull people out of places. They didn't want to kill me, they just wanted to take me down to Washington. And I was removed first to one of the CIA buildings in Langley, then taken to a special one in McLean, Virginia, which, whether you believe this or not, and I've had it verified by one person who knows of it, I will not say who, they had a dedicated portal which went straight to Alpha Centauri 1. And that was where I went. I spent approximately 4 days there being questioned by, grilled by this group of people. Well, where have you been? What have you done? And so forth. Well, among other things, I traveled in time, and they got very interested when I told them the whole story. They panicked and they told me, "You're going back," which is very rare. The Pentagon, when I was back, didn't know what to do with me. I was in the Pentagon and had been reporting into the Pentagon since 1947. They had no assignments for me. So I reported in every day as I was supposed to do, and I literally wasted my day there, or part of it. And finally, I went to the Joint Chiefs. What's going on? I want to continue my work here in the Navy. I consider myself a career man. I would like to see my family, which I had. I married in late '43, had a son by the name of Jeff, who I've never seen since '52. I snuck a visit. My wife was killed in a car crash in '57, from what I've learned. What's going on? Why can't I do something? Why can't I do my work? Joint Chiefs finally stated, and it came out of the mouth of the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, there's nothing we can do. This is beyond our control, or it is out of our hands. August, they finally made up their minds, or somebody made it up for them, which I think is the more accurate description, that I had to be eliminated by being sent backwards in time and planted in another family, the Bielek family, in 1927. Of course, they had to do a few other things in the meantime, namely, literally, age regress me and shrink me down to the size of about a 9-month-old baby, wipe all my memories as Ed Cameron. The job was very thorough. I didn't remember anything about Ed Cameron until 1988, is when the memories of the Philadelphia experiment came back. January 1988, one Saturday night, watching HBO, the Philadelphia experiment commercial movie. In any case, I was removed to the Bielek family, grew up as Al Bielek, and eventually recovered my memories, and the fact that I was in Montauk project also as Al Bielek, not Edward Cameron. But when I found out how thoroughly my memories have been worked over, screwed over would be a more proper term, I became very interested in mind control. How could they do this? What happened? Well, as time went on, various things developed. Memory started to come back, but a lot of it didn't all come back at once. It comes back in pieces, literally, piecemeal. Something happens, you go to a site where you've been before, and you then have your memory triggered. You were there before, well, what happened, etc., that type of thing. At that time in Scottsdale, Arizona, because I was living in Phoenix, Arizona from 1961 through 93. In 93, I moved to Atlanta. And at that time, I met a man there who was in, shall we say, the alternative healing arts. He was a radionics specialist, had his own equipment. It was recommended to me by a friend that I go see him. He might, quote, be able to help me, unquote. So he examined me and says, "You got some real problems." Well, I says, "Well, I know I got a few." He says, "Well, from what I can examine of you and see, you're running overload in certain parts of your brain." And says, "If something isn't done about this soon, you're going to have a burnout, a real nervous breakdown or a nervous wreckage of some kind. I can fix this." "Oh, okay, what do I do?" "Well, you don't really do anything. I take 3 pictures of you on a Polaroid camera, and I put them in my machine here, and you'll come back in 6 months, and we'll see how things are going." So we did that. And someplace between the time when he took the pictures and when I went back to see him, suddenly, blam, all the memories started to come back. I did not understand at that time exactly what had happened. But he told me much of what they do in this mind control business involves breaking the synchronization between right and left brain lobes. You have them totally desynchronized. They're overloaded. There's all kinds of what he called hotspots. And this can be ameliorated, cleared up by the type of treatment he did. And I says, I don't have any money at the time, so don't even worry about it. He never asked for any money. Of course, I never paid him any. He had many, many other clients from all over the world, apparently successfully helping these people. The man is, well, he was in California for many years. I believe he's now dead, from what I was told by a close friend. But this aroused my interest. What goes on with mind control? How was it done? Is it always so carefully and subliminally done that you are so unaware of what has happened that if somebody says, quote, you're into mind control, unquote, you'll say to them, you're a damn liar, because you believe that you're not mind controlled. I was in that position. I didn't believe that I was under any kind of mind control or mind manipulation. But when the memories came back at the Philadelphia experiment, of course, then I knew something very serious had happened. Why did these memories get suppressed? How did they do it? Well, one of the things that developed, of course, I'm compressing a lot of data into a short time. One of the things that developed, of course, they had to keep me alive. They had to keep Duncan alive. They had to keep John Von Neumann alive and a few other people because we had traveled in time. Von Neumann did himself later. And we were part of a time loop which was created, the disturbance, I should say, in the time field was created by the passage of the Eldridge into hyperspace and the fact that Duncan and I went from 1943 to 1983, and there was a mass disturbance in the time field. Now, time as such is an energy. There is a field, and of course this is not in the textbooks. These are things we learned as part of the Philadelphia experiment, and of course much later as part of the Montauk project. There are 4 basic energies in the universe that we know of, and they seem to cover everything. Electric fields, everybody knows about electricity. We have all the lighting, etc. Magnetic fields, a gravity field, which of course is not taught in the textbooks. The current theories accepted, of course, generated years ago by the gentleman who had an apple hit him on the head, and he said, gravity, it's an attraction of matter for matter. It was a valid explanation, or so it appeared at the time, but actually there is a separate gravitic field. NASA found this out the hard way when they tried to get to the moon a few years ago, a few decades ago. They missed the moon with the initial shots. They found out after they did get some missiles and vehicles there, the gravity on the moon is not 1/6 of Earth's. That was based on the assumptions of mass and the gravity equating to mass, which was the old theories. They said 1/6 of Earth's gravity turned out to be equal. The moon's gravity is essentially the same as the Earth's. This caused a 2-year delay in the space program where they said, well, we need a Saturn V to get off the Earth, and how are we going to get back from the moon? We can't put a Saturn V up there. They had to develop in that 2-year interim a valuable anti-gravity system which was installed on the LEM and the return vehicles so they could get off the moon's surface without the use of chemical rockets. Oh, but they put one on for show. That shows in all of the movies. The Russians dropped out totally at that time. But we finally made it to the moon. A lot of things have been covered up. I was not part of the moon project. That's a side issue. In any case, I started looking at all of this and started reading like crazy, and anything I get my hands on in terms mind manipulation, mind control, what goes on, what can be done. Very briefly, if you go back into the history of it, of course, this morning, the first speaker covered it very well, I think, in terms of the older cult-type techniques of mind manipulation. You pick and select a victim who has had a family history of at least 3 generations of child abuse, usually sexual child abuse, referring primarily to females, because basically in the older systems and the cult techniques and the old Montauk program, which is a name they put on it in modern times, they only use females. It's a long process, 10 to 15 years. They have to traumatize the individual, split the mind up, and of course, there is no coordination between right and left brain lobes. But this individual is splintered down so they have an hour purview of their life and what they're doing until they're very easily manipulated. And of course, most of them wound up as sex slaves, but not all for that purpose. And you come up into more modern times, of course, these techniques have been used. They have been, I can hardly say improved on, because basically they are the same when you use those older techniques. And they've used them right up through modern times, as two previous speakers today have pointed out, and how they were victimized, and the fact that it all came from a history of child abuse in their families. They select the families, look for this history, and then pick an individual and then put them through the mill, starting typically at the age of about 3. It's rather a traumatic event for a 3-year-old girl to be raped. In fact, it's extremely traumatic. And this is unfortunately the way it has been done. In the workshop, I'll go into detail on what's happened in modern times and what the more modern approaches have been. But during the war period, both prior to World War II and during it, the Germans were doing their own research on mind control and mind manipulation. The SS troops, one of the reports I got right after the war, had a very interesting indoctrination technique. Whoever were the SS people being indoctrinated in the class, of course, they'd sit in a class room type situation similar to this, be facing forward, but in the back of the room, in the back corners, would be 2 or more sound projectors operating at 27 kilohertz. And this 27 kilohertz hitting on the back of the heads and the occipitals would produce a condition of acceptance of what was being taught to them. It would make them more amenable to whatever they were being indoctrinated to. This is one of the techniques which was brought to the U.S. And of course, when the German scientists came over after the war in Operation Paperclip, which my father was a major element, they came to Brookhaven National Laboratories to continue 2 major projects. One was mind control, the other was time travel. The mind control aspect, of course, continued on there and eventually wound up at Montauk. But beside from that, we also have to go back to another earlier part of history. One of the other people who became heavily involved in this was Dr. Wilhelm Reich on a CIA contract in 1947 through 52, the newly formed CIA, when she was asked to find out what are the basic techniques whereby you can, quote, deprogram somebody. Of course, they wanted both sides of the coin, which included programming, and also can you make a psychic child more psychic? Wilhelm Reich found the answers all right. He found out what the mechanism is internally in the head, how the interface is between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. All of the commands, all of the programming, which determines the subconscious control of a programmed individual, whatever that program may be for. It can be for almost anything, from an assassin to an agitator to a spy to a sex slave, male or female. It's all buried in the subconscious, and it requires certain keys, certain keywords, key codes, expressions, perhaps sound, even a telephone call, to convert that person to the program. It's all buried in there. The conscious mind will not be aware of this at any time. When they're keyed, it flips over to the program and the other side of that person's personality. They might have more than one program. My brother Duncan had about 6 before we got that out of him. And they will then do whatever they are programmed to do. Very briefly, what might you think in modern days some of these people would be programmed to do? Remember the incident at Columbine High School, not very far from here, about 2 years ago? That was all mind control. Those 2 kids were under mind control. They were also under the effects of Dilantin, which is a very disturbing chemical to the human mind and the human psyche. And there was a very large operation involved with that. It was not just those 2 kids. There was a 3rd gunman that was announced by the sheriff when they first brought it out. If you caught the live transmission, not the rebroadcast, it was asked, how many gunmen are in there? He says 3. 2 are dead, and this one I'm bringing out and taking down the station. Did you ever hear anything more about that again? That gunman was much older than Eric or the other boy, approximately 30. There were bombs all over the cafeteria and elsewhere in the building which did not get exploded. They obviously couldn't do all of this alone. It was a joint operation with somebody. I won't go into the details on that, there's not time enough. There's been many of those school incidents across the country, including one that's out of Atlanta, exactly 1 month later, in a high school 35 miles east of Atlanta. That one was most curious. The kid, about 12 years old, was out in the schoolyard and goes bang, 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 bang all over. He doesn't hit anyone. But the assistant principal comes out and tries to calm him down and says, put the gun down, put the gun down. Eventually the kid did. So the principal, or assistant principal, goes up, puts his arm around to try and calm the kid, and suddenly the kid goes like that and jerks, where am I? What's going on? Now, that didn't stay on TV very long either. The manipulation is all part of this program of mind manipulation, includes the media and what is allowed to be broadcast, and of course live transmissions they can only monitor after the transmission on the rebroadcasting. The media control, the subliminal controls on TV and radio and in the press are all part of this program. But there are very definite ways for slowly easing people into a controlled society, which is the current goal, which does not require highly submissive mind manipulation. It's submission over a period of time. You're educated into it. The more averse, or I should say the more overt programs involving direct mind manipulation, of course, require either hardware or other techniques. Wilhelm Reich found the basic mechanism, which is that the conscious mind and the subconscious mind, of course this took years of work on his part and the staff, and shall we say some rather interesting, probably orgy type operations. He found out that the conscious and subconscious mind link up at one point and become common, joined, at the point of orgasm. Now the problem there is, as I think most people know, the orgasm doesn't last very long. How do you make it last long enough to program somebody? That became the subject of further work. And that whole aspect I will go into in the workshop. They found many ways to do this. And one of the very basic problems was really, how do you do it? The older techniques were not concerned with this. The newer ones were concerned with a form of sexual manipulation to connect the conscious and the subconscious so that you could literally talk to the person and program them through the conscious mind in a more or less awake state. And then, of course, implant the commands and the cover-up. You won't remember this until such time as these commands are given. One of the major programs that came out of this, of course, was the Montauk boys. We'll go into that heavily in the workshop. And that, of course, was one of the programs which was started at Montauk in 1976 with some preliminary work. It branched out from Montauk to all over this country and eventually all over the planet. According to the Air Force today, who did some investigating after 1987, 97, 98, after Preston and I got in the act in Long Island again, they made a major investigation of the underground Montauk Boys programming bases, of which there were 6 on Long Island alone. They broke into one, found the records, 30,000 dossiers of victims, hard dossiers, captured some of the personnel. And then after that investigation, they found out that this was all over, and as they said it, this is not only a problem in the United States, it's a worldwide problem, and they made a very conservative estimate after some 6 months or a year of investigation that there are at least 5 million Montauk boys fully programmed in the United States alone, and, quote, it's a worldwide problem, unquote. The problem is, what do they want to use them for, and how are they going to use them? When I was running the program from 79 to 81, because I took it over from a prior person who was running it, I wanted to clean the thing up and go to completely electronic programming, and instead of beating them into submission that had been previously done, offer them a carrot, so to speak. We will do this for you if you do this for us in the programming. And that was, most of these kids were picked up as street kids, lost, away from home, had no support, trying to live off the streets. And we told them, we'll give you a bank account, go back to school, finish your schooling. If you go on to go to college, do that. As far as you want to go and you think you can go, that's fine, we'll pay for it. You'll have a bank account with money put in it and kept there. When you go back into natural, normal society as working and so forth, we won't do this anymore. You'll never remember having been here, but that someday, sometime in the future, we will need you, and you will be contacted at that time. Most of them accepted at that point. I think it was over 90% accepted. Those who didn't want to be part of it said, okay, you can leave, no problem, but you'll never remember having been here. How this was done and what the techniques involved were, I'll go into. got very little time left at this point because I am sharing. But this problem of mind manipulation and mind control involves today everyone in the civilian sector, as well as those who are subjected to deliberate mind manipulation for some program. It's involved in the civilian populations of every major city in the U.S. and to a lesser extent throughout the world. Much less than in the U.S., because I've traveled around the world, including Australia, and find very few Montauk boys in Europe or Australia. They are there, but there's quite few of them. It's a major problem in the U.S., very major. And we'll get into that later. I don't know if there's time enough for a question or two. If there are any questions, we'll attempt to answer them. Okay, we'll allow 2 questions. Okay.
You got to be over to the microphone. Here's the man up.
Right, up to the microphone, yes.
Al, does the NRA know about what was really behind the Columbine and other kinds similar shootings?
Yes, I think I can answer that. What was behind the Columbine operation, as it were, because it was a major operation. There were some 6 or 7 school shootings in the period of that year, last year. The whole purpose of that was to get pushed through Congress legislation which had been stalled, namely gun control legislation. That was the end purpose. Get the public, as David Icke says in his own books, and it's a very valid statement, create a problem, have the problem recognized by the people, have the people get to the point where they demand a solution, and of course offer the solution, which is what you wanted in the first place. New legislation, whatever it may be. In the case of guns, to get rid of them, first you control them, then you eliminate them later on. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
One other question?
Name of questioner, please.
Yes, sir. My name is George from Santa Fe. About the same time as the Columbine incident, there was one in Scotland. Is there reason to believe that that one in Scotland was also due to mind control?
You say there was one in Scotland also?
Yes, sir. In a school.
Didn't know about that one.
Yes, sir.
Of course, I don't read Scottish newspapers as a rule. But it could well be part of the same thing. It could be independent. I'm not saying that some of these couldn't be literally some kind of independent operation by kids who are thoroughly fed up with whatever they're fed up with, whether it be parental home situations or otherwise. This is what is usually sloughed off as problems at home, problems with the situation they don't like in school or at home, and they let off steam. But of course, in days gone by, they didn't let off steam by shooting somebody. Today, this seems to have been the developed technique. I can't answer that for Scotland. I don't know.
I don't know.
Until
Mr.
my
Kennedy
time-
is not here, so if he's not here, you can go ahead. We'll get up here quickly, please. Okay. I'm sorry, Al. I thought he wasn't here.
Okay, he's here. Thanks very much.
all
See
right.
you in the workshop.
Thank you, Al. Oh, I wanted to tell him, go ahead and let him hook
Okay.
up. Al has graciously, his workshop will be tomorrow night, because tonight we've got too many for the rooms available. So don't anybody move. Our staff is ordered to shoot on site. And so as soon as we get Lawrence hooked up here with the microphone, oh no, we're getting Sandra hooked up. Oh, okay. Now, you got the sheets perhaps through re-evolution through solar DNA transmutation. So while the tape keeps rolling, I gave him the same, phone call that I gave to Al Bielek, said, can you use 27 minutes? And he said he could. So welcome Lawrence Kennedy and his associate, Sandra Sitzman, too, please. Yeah, that mic. Oh, and you also got a lavalier on.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dean. I feel privileged to be able to be on the program today, and with Dean's introduction there, following Al Bielek and all the other wonderful speakers you've had here. I have actually only 20 minutes because my partner has the last 7 minutes that she's going to enlighten you with. So in 20 minutes, what could I say to you that would enlighten you after all of this, okay? Well, let me just say to you that we believe we've had literally earth-shaking information. That's why I accepted this and came here, because of the information has been bridged after 29 years of research, all right? Just real quick so that you can understand, all I'll be able to do in 20 minutes is give you an outline of the workshop, the extensive slide program that we're showing tonight, all new stuff. Let me give you an idea of what we're talking about. How many of you, there's just show of hands here, that were at last year's monthly, where I also kindly was brought in by Dean at the last minute because we were in Denver, and I showed the information on the solar flares. Any of you here? Okay. All right, now the things that if you remember, and I'm going to say that to Dean too, if you remember, I said that this is the big year, and August was the big month for the burns, for the heat that was going to be generated by the solar flares. Also for the winds that were going to be falling and the topsy-turvy weather conditions. All of this is due to the sun. Now, I'm going to try to bridge all of this real quick for you, so you have to stay alert so you can see the connection, hopefully until tonight, where the workshop where I have the extensive information. I'm not going to tell you what all this is, but these are solar flares, both X-ray, which influences our tectonic plates, the weather system, the jet stream, which is radically changing, and I'm sure you must be aware of that, okay? And the ultraviolet UV, which is what the sun cruisers, which I'll be talking and showing pictures exclusively, that even the ones that were on the Art Bell show when I was on that, interviewed on that, and the ones that have been on the web are not on this, okay? That show the flares being bent by these incredible planetary size vehicles. Now, that's these two pictures. They are also tied into crop circles that have been warning us of the flares. All right, now I don't want to, they've told me, my source has told me not to build up a fear concerning the solar flares, but rather to explain what is happening around you so that you understand. I'm going to try to put it in a nutshell for you. There's an acceleration process going on if you're not aware of it. How many of you out there feel this increased acceleration that's going on, right? Right. And what has literally happened, and the photograph right here, 2 years ago, or actually 3 almost, in '97, was the transformation from our sun actually created a vehicle overnight to boost us ahead, so that the Julian calendar in our mindset was corrected 2.5 years behind the solar calendar. And it was corrected so that our time frame, our timeline, and our mindset was corrected so that we could go into this dimensional change with the right mindset. Now that may be a lot to stomach, but I'm going to show you the details on it tonight. And we're now actually in 2003. We're approaching, by 2001, we're really approaching 2003. He jumped us ahead overnight, and the sun god, Ra, or whatever, is in control of this solar system, all right, completely. He calls the shots of this solar system. And so he is the one who changed the dimensional shift, and with the alignment that just happened on May 5th, it's the first time in 26,000 years that this window has opened up. So we're going to make this leap, and all of my sources, and I'm going to just allude to that in a moment, of what that is physically, is alluding to the fact that we are actually ahead of the game. We're not losing ground that we have been for thousands of years, in a sense, that we're there, and we're getting assistance this time. We're overcoming a certain amount of bondage on this planet, which I will cover tonight, and it's part of what Pamela was going to talk to you about with the Drackle information, with the ET, the negative, and the positive. We're talking here about, they've been called many names. They're called the Watchers, okay? They're called the Wing Makers. They're called other things that have been mentioned in all kinds of literature. But basically they are the guardians. And the guardian race, if you wish, are, I hate to put it on plateaus, but they are above extraterrestrial intelligence. They are creator gods, and they don't intervene normally in human endeavors. They allow us to proceed through our normal process. In other words, what I'm saying to you is that Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker have the same ground here. all right? And everything is open game, and they don't intervene. However, they are this time, only because we have been in a certain amount of bondage, and we're not going to miss this window this time. It's been 26,000 years, and it will be longer than that the next time this window opens up. So we're ahead of the game, and so far we're making it. I'm going to go into that extensively tonight. The proof of that is the indigo children. Now, I had a death experience, just real quick, at 33 years of age. 29 years ago, now you know how old I am, I was an advertising executive, completely into the agnostic material world. I was really working for them, the advertising game in the 60s. They knew what you were all about, and the subliminal advertising that you know about or have heard about is only the tip of the iceberg. Our biggest contractors was the U.S. government, okay? After the death experience. During it, I met two entities on the other side. Went through the whole classic thing, but when I went through it was before Moody's work or Saved by the Light or anything else, and everybody said you blow a blood vessel in your brain, chemical changes, illusions. Nobody accepted. To hold my sanity together, I bridged my master's degree in philosophy to parapsychology because it was the only thing that even came close to having the answers. And it was a complete flip-flop of consciousness for me. So my reality completely changed, and from there on forward, I have been working to try to have people understand what is really going on this planet and what is really behind it, all right? If you want to call it the conspiracies, there are no bad guys out there or good guys. It's just bad agendas, all right? Now, what we've developed here, what I'm going to point out, the solar flares are affecting earthquake activity. They're affecting our weather, as I said, and our consciousness through our magnetic aura. So all of this is being speeded up and shifting. With that, the indigo children, which that was what I did my doctorate work on. I specialized on the Geller children. I knew Uri Geller, and I specialized on the Geller children throughout the world. I actually taught 900 people through my classes certain techniques related to that over the last 10 years of that time. And this work is not even complete yet. You see the front cover only of our book, which is our third book, and this one is First Wave 2000. And we couldn't get it off the print yet. It's still in composition. So that's the front cover. What this is about is what we used to call star people. Star people from Brad Steiger's book. How many are aware of his research, Star People, way back in the 80s? Okay, I've known Brad for 25 years. I'm in 2 of his books. Okay, Destined to Love tells all about the death experience and totems, all right? And Brad endorsed those books. And this book is about star people that we were calling them star people then. I started off calling them in my classes aliens until that damn movie came out, Alien, and I quit that. Okay, so they're star people. So if you want to know what that is, get the latest one. It's about now, it's been out about 5 years, Starborn, which is the update, except it doesn't have the profile in it, which you need, and we do have the 22 questionnaire profile. We also identify these people, which are now also the indigo children. They're just another name for the same phenomena with Kirlian photography. I started off in '75 with Dr. Thelma Moss when she came back from the Soviet Union, got a grant at UCLA for 10 years to study this. She brought me in because of my work with the Geller children. She couldn't get Geller, so she wanted the Geller children to photograph to see why they were different, why they bent metal, why they started fires, why they did all those other things that you've been hearing about. The government was very, very heavily involved, unbeknownst to you, okay? They were trying to keep ahead of the Soviets in the 60s and 70s in psychic research. They had a whole task force, all right? So I even raised a son that was one of these. That's one of the main reasons that I was in it. So what we were able to do is identify these unusual people, star people we call them, now indigo children combination, because the little finger in Kirlian photography, which is the psychic finger, which is the intuitive finger, it's also the genetic coding, which we were the last ones to, it was the last one to be mapped out by us after 15 years. that identifies star people. And it profiles, or it bridges the profile. Now, we can do it that way, and we can test other ways in the profile. So this is the 25 years worth of identification. Why are the indigo children important? They're important because for the first time we've mapped the DNA. Everybody knows that in the human DNA. Okay. And what they've been calling for years now, the geneticists have been calling junk DNA, the stuff that they don't know what it is, it's on the peripheral, besides the two-strand, that's the good stuff. We know that that is actually what is the composition of what is going to be the third strand. They're finding and beyond, third, fifth, even 8th, 10th, 15th strand eventually. What is happening is, the difference is these children are now coming forward and in China and all over the world, and they're being identified physically and scientifically now as an extra strand forming. They're actually finding the third strand. In addition to that, that third strand is crystalline in nature. We're a carbon-based atom. And what is coming about is a transformation, transmutation to a crystalline form. That's where it's going, the crystalline form on the DNA. And that third strand is already being identified. You're not hearing about it with Dan Rathers on CNN because they're keeping a lid on it. They don't want you to know the real truth, all right, on this. But they're finding it, and it's there. There is an invisible magnetic shaft, like your spine, that runs up that DNA lattice. And that's what attracts that junk DNA that they call junk DNA to make those extra strands. And it's happening, people. This is the first time we've had physical evidence in our own cellular transmutation. We're going to go through that window. At least some of us are. And the Earth is doing it. The Earth is going through it, her destiny to go through that window, to make that leap in consciousness from the third dimension through the fourth, because the fourth is coming down on us now. That's why it's so radical right now, into the fifth. And when that happens, the new Earth will be a manifestation, okay? So I can't give you all the details on that. You're going to have to see it tonight. And you'll see the progression, the scientific data that we do have. I go out of my way to try to bridge the esoteric, that's the nature of my game, to the scientific, so that it's provable. So that is what's important. Now, we just placed an ad in Atlantis Rising. I don't know how many of you are familiar with that publication this month. It just came out. And that ad concerns the indigo children. We're going to be at the conference at the Well Springs Conference in September. And we'll be there representing that material. And so we do have these back at the booth that you can pick them up. There's an incredible amount of support information on what is going on right now in relationship to that. So the indigo children are these special energies that are coming forward. Some of them know who they are, and some of them don't, just like with star people. We have together, Sandra and I have spent 18 years together trying to wake up star people. We actually created a film in 1988 just for that purpose. It is entirely right brain film. It's just to wake up star people so that they know who they are and why they're here. Now we have, this doesn't sound like commercial, but I want you to know what we've done. This is the first book that we published after 25 years of my research, keeping track of the earth changes, as you see down here, earthquake activity. Long before I had the access to computers and the web and the USGS, I was following it in the newspaper about a week late and tracking where they were going to be projecting, why, what parts of the earth are traumatized. It's like a rear view mirror. Terra in transition is like a rear view mirror showing why the earth is traumatized on its surface skin, why it has a memory through wars and pestilence and turbulation all over the world, those certain areas through the Middle East and through California, those lines on a polar axis that it exists today, 26 degree to 23 degree wobble axis, is due to the fact that the Earth got hit by a huge big asteroid. Atlantis got taken out 12,500 years ago. And that's what caused the Earth to wobble and go on an unsettled axis. That off axis from its normal axis created a sort of amnesia with the Earth. If you ever notice that things are not exactly perfect here? Okay, she's been operating with that deficiency for 12,000 years, all right? And the memory is coming back to her, and the situation is going to be righted again, all right? In the meantime, people are waking up. We have a vast majority of people here from Atlantis that have incarnated, that have wanted and waited to be in line for this last window, so to speak, to correct the situation, so to speak, okay? To ensure that it isn't goofed up again, we don't lose this opportunity. So this was what this book was about, like a rear view mirror, and it outlines that. They said, we don't want you in the prophecy business. We want, because prophecy is changeable, it's not written in stone. We want you to just have people realize why they created these things, why humanity has gone through the sources it has. And they said the sun was, and this is 1978, they woke me up 4 o'clock in the morning and told me this. And it took me that long to put the book together. They said the sun was the catalyst. And I said, okay, what about the sun? They said, later. 20 years to the day, they woke me up again at 4 o'clock in the morning. These same collective energies that I saw on the other side during the death experience and connected with. And they said, now we're going to tell you about the sun, because you got a computer and you got a satellite out there called SHOHO that you can tap into hourly, on an hourly or minute basis even, and get this information that we're now putting together. So they told me that the sun was the catalyst for all this, that it's really all caused by the sun, Ra, and his reaction to his daughter, Terra here, okay? That is what we're going on, what's going on with this planet, all right? So that's what is going on with the sun. So they said, put together this book, Thunderous Days of Change, and I did several video backups on it as to why the sun is doing what it's doing. Let me just tell you what they told me. And I said, what? They said the sun is a holographic expression, which we're seeing on a two-dimensional flat screen, so to speak. A holographic expression of what's going on with the planet. In other words, both continents, both sides of the planet is being reflected on the surface corona of that sun through the solar sun spots and the flares that originate from them. And when we get those huge flares that come out, it's magnetic in nature, and that's what stimulates it. Those holes, those black spots, are like little black holes. They're absent of magnetic field, just like the breaks in our corona discharge around the fingertips. It's almost exactly like Kirlian photography. The micro and the macro match, of course, okay? So the sun is the catalyst. That's what they told me. And I said, oh, great. You want me to go out there and explain that to them, right? Did you get it? A holographic expression? Huh? Do you understand that? Well, you will tonight, because I'm going to show you the illustrations that show how that works. Okay. All right. And now you're going to hear from Sandra. Thank you very much, and hope to see you tonight.
Okay, I'm Sandra Sitzman, and I'm the other half. Lawrence and I have been working together for quite some time now, and what I would like to start is to ask you a question. I'll probably end with a question, and I'd like to say, do you know where you're going to? Which is Diana Ross's title of her song. And I ask that because today we've heard many speakers talk about things that we don't necessarily find very pleasant. And it is up to us to decide. Our choice is which path we want to take. Number one, we are informed very much these days, and thanks to conferences like this and Dean and his helpers, we are able to get and disseminate much information. The internet, even though I myself am not that crazy about it, is a very wonderful form of information so that we can become much more aware, much more conscious, and that is very important these days. And what we're going to also discover is that it's not just awareness, but we are more than just a physical body or a mental body. We are a physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual body. So these are the 4 areas that we would like to address this evening at our workshop. And we also do it and show it with Kirlian photography. This is Lawrence's specialty. He worked at UCLA, and he actually developed the method of analyses, and that we do have available at our table if anybody would like to see that. And as he mentioned, we do identify star people or indigo children. Now, indigo children are starting to come in great waves nowadays. However, it's mainly because they have a job to do, just as all of you have a job to do. The indigo children, however, did start hundreds of years ago. They are the ones that have been the pioneers of science and spirituality both. Lawrence and I are great synthesizers, and we also want to bridge the scientific world with the spiritual world. We want that right-left brain balance, and I think that that's a very important key to a healthy body. So what I would ask you is to think about questions such as, why are some people healthy? Why are some people not healthy? Why are some people thin and why are some people fat? Why are some people psychic and some people not? Why are some people tuned in more than others? And so forth. We can ask a long list of questions pertaining to that. And my answer to you would be that it goes into the genetic heritage of our bodies and our lineage. Now, this morning we heard some of the speakers talk about the reptilians and the Illuminati, and there is truth to that. However, I would like to think that we can go and rise above that. We have had a Star Wars situation for all of these eons of times. It's gone on whether we've known it or not. We are now reclaiming our memory, and we are beginning to understand the process of what is occurring on this planet. And this planet does not have to be doomed. Lawrence will be addressing the solar flares and what's going on with that and why that is occurring. We do not have to be a lost planet or a lost civilization. There are things that we can do, and we will be addressing that this evening. You can also again see us at our booth. We have tools that we have developed over these years that are very beneficial for you. They are along the lines of the electromagnetic energy. We have specific things that we have been told to develop, and they are very available and very powerful. I feel like they are the best products that we have seen around, although there are other products that are also good. Every body relates to certain frequencies. So one tool might be great for you and another tool might be preferable for another person. So I am always eager to hear about other products that are out there as well. I do have a list here. I'm not really going to go through this. I just wanted to have you see this. The title is Re-Evolution. And how is that done? Another big question. We will definitely address that this evening. We will be talking about the mechanics of the DNA and go into some of the depth of the cell. Every organ consists of cells, or you would not exist. The cell is vital for your life. It is the life force. But if we go even into a more microcosmic world, in that cell, we will find the DNA. And what is that DNA? It is the brain of our body. It is, as far as I'm concerned, our soul essence. Because through that, we can re-evolve, we can re-manipulate, and we can change the programming that we have had genetically in our body. I no longer need to know that if my family has a long history of heart disease or arthritis or whatever it is, I do not have to accept that. I can reprogram through my mind into the genetics of my body so that I can change my world. So I think that that is a very hopeful message, and I think that we can overcome a lot. Remember, awareness is important, but we can go beyond that. We can use our 4 levels, body, mind, soul, and spirit, and we can do great things. We are meant to be great cosmic beings, and that is where we are going, and that is what we are becoming. So I would hope that you can come at 6:30 this evening. We will be addressing all of these issues and also some of the agendas. It is very wise to know what the agendas are, and yes, we need to be aware of both sides so that we can make intelligent choices. Our bodies are very wise. So let's tune into them and make wise decisions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lawrence. Thank you, Sandra. Now you've got a kind of a compressed, more compressed version of what's going to be offered in the workshops. Theirs is tonight. Al Bielek's is tomorrow night, Sunday night. Now then, be back in about 7 or 8 minutes, if you will, please. Our technical difficulties cause us to start a little bit late, so we're running a few minutes behind.